even those who are most enthusiastic about the war, they're not less enthusiastic about the war, but they are worried about the way it's being conducted. If the Ukrainians are able to walk into our territory, if the Ukrainians are able to throw drones at our capital. And so that sense of disquiet, I think, is there. How deep it goes, we don't really know.
Now, Ukraine sent a fleet of drones to attack Moscow last night in the biggest aerial assault on the Russian capital since the 2022 invasion. 11 drones were shot down by Russian air defences, but the attack forced 3 airports around Moscow to restrict flights for 4 hours overnight. It was part of a wider attack, Russia saying that it destroyed a total of 45 drones that targeted several other regions as well as Moscow. Now, this comes as Ukrainian troops continue their fight on Russian soil following the dramatic ground invasion of the Kursk region on August 6. Well, let's talk to Michael Clarke, former Director General at RUSI and Professor of Defence Studies at King's College. Michael, thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Michael, what was the purpose of this attack? Ukraine surely would have known that those drones would inflict very little damage if even they were able to get past the Russian air defences.
Yeah, but 2 things. One is that they got to Moscow, whereas they ought to have been shot down a lot earlier. And 2, as you said in your report, in your intro, they closed 3 airports for a while. I mean, you know what it's like when Heathrow closes for a couple of hours. The backup for the rest of the day and into the following day sometimes is quite inconvenient. So it's a way of bringing home to the Russian public that you can't pretend you're not fighting a war. To inconvenience the public, to remind them. And also, the Ukrainians might have hoped that they'll get lucky with 1 or 2 drones and that they would be able to hit a valuable military target. That doesn't seem to have happened, but I think they'll be happy enough from their point of view if they've got the publicity and the recognition of the fact that they fired at least 45 drones last night at places, not just Moscow, but Bryansk and Belgorod, Kaluga, Tula, and quite a lot of places were hit, or at least were attacked. And I think they want to show the Russians that they're capable of doing that all the way into Russia and all the way along their common frontier.
Had one of those drones got through and achieved their target, what kind of damage are they capable of doing?
Not very much, because the drones themselves, I mean, they're very hard to pick up on radar because they're light and they travel slowly. But because of that, they don't carry a big warhead. So they would have done some damage, but not very much. When 2 drones were sent against the citadel of the Kremlin itself, the first drone attack in Moscow, going back over a year now, they did a tiny amount of damage. But of course, the political effect of 2 drones on the citadel in the Kremlin was quite electrifying.
Well, let's talk about that political effect and the psychological effect of Moscow citizens finding, as you said, their airports closed and being told there's a drone attack coming from Ukraine. What kind of an effect does that have on the Russian public, and how do the Russian public still feel about the war?
Well, in one sense, there's 2 contradictory responses, really. One is a rally around the flag, that, they're attacking us, so we've got to actually do something about that. And there's the incursion into Kursk, the idea that the Ukrainians have crossed over into Russian territory, creates a rally around the flag effect. Mm-hmm. But beneath that, there is also a sense of disquiet, and that's pretty clear from Russian media, from even the pro-Kremlin, very pro-Kremlin channels. I mean, they're all state-sponsored channels, but even those who are most enthusiastic about the war, they're not less enthusiastic about the war, but they are worried about the way it's being conducted. If the Ukrainians are able to walk into our territory, if the Ukrainians are able to throw drones at our capital. And so that sense of disquiet, I think, is there. How deep it goes, we don't really know. And I mean, the Russian public will not remove Putin, but sooner or later, the elite around him will. And in a way, the psychological or the political element of all of this is to try to convince the elite around Putin that this man is taking Russia nowhere. This man is in a strategic blind alley, and Russia is just going to suffer for it. Now, most of the elite still think they'll be okay. They still think they're doing quite well. But if that perception changes, and things like this are designed to try to change that perception, then Putin will be in a very different position. But, it hasn't happened yet. I'm convinced it will happen eventually, but when eventually is, could be in 2 months' time, could be in 5 years' time.
Michael, thank you for giving us your time. Michael Clarke there, former Director General at RUSI and Professor of Defence Studies at King's College.
я перевернув тобі.
Щоб далі приїхати. Не падало. Не, виходь.